Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Business Blaze. I am your host Simon, and today we're looking at AOL and where it all went wrong. This is a super interesting one. AOL as a company still exists today. I always remember them making those CDs. We're going to look at how they went from those CDs and kind of being omnipresent and absolutely dominating the market to where they are today, and it's surprising what they actually do and that they still make money and they're still a successful company. We're also going to look at what we can learn from all of this for the next time that you are running a giant company, and yeah, you're not going to learn anything, but it'll be a fun story. Danny wrote this. Thank you, Danny. If you've got suggestions for something for us to cover on Business Blaze in the future, you know what to do. Leave it in the comments below. While you're down there, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel for new content several times a week, and let's get into it. If you're of a certain age, you may well remember the weird and wonderful noises of the early days of the mainstream internet. Those strange squawking and screeching noises as you waited for the modem to connect to the telephone line. Those familiar voices that welcomed you to the service and dramatically announced that you've got mail. I remember the pew, pew, pew sounds, but I never had like the woman telling me you've got mail. I thought that was just in movies. Also, if you're of a certain age, am I old? Maybe I'm old. If you were using the internet back in the 90s and very early noughties, there's every chance you were subscribed to AOL. It stood for America Online originally. I lived in the UK, obviously, and I don't think I had AOL. I think I had something called CompuServe. Definitely available in the UK, I'm pretty sure, even though it was called America Online. For a few short but gloriously triumphant years, America Online was the most recognized brand on the internet. Those free trial CDs, which appeared in every magazine and every letterbox and every street corner and every shop counter, were probably in every packet of tea bags as well, and they played a major played a major part of getting AOL into the homes of 34 million subscribers at its peak in 2001. And I remember buying computer magazines, and it would come with a free CD with software on it, and you'd also maybe get a second CD with AOL on it, and this was back in the time where it's like, wow, a CD, great! Fast forward just a few years, throw in one of the most disastrous mergers of all time with Time Warner, and AOL has quickly become little more than a footnote in history. But Danny, it still exists. It's still a glorious, it's not in a good state. So, how on earth was this allowed to happen? Although most of us associate AOL with the internet boom of the late 1990s, the company has a long history stretching back to 1983. Another technology company with a super long history is Nintendo. Their history goes back, I think it's to the late 19th century, so well over 100 years. If you want to know the Nintendo story, let me know in the comments below, upvote it to the top, and maybe we can do a Business Blaze on Nintendo. That could be fun. Initially known as the Control Video Corporation, the company's sole product was a fairly obscure online gaming service for the Atari 2600, I'm not sure the correct pronunciation there. Before my time, actually, console. I might be old, but I'm not that old. 1983 online gaming, that's pretty awesome. I didn't even know that was a thing. Evolving into quantum computer services, in 1985 the company launched the Quantum Link online service for the Commodore 64 before expanding into the IBM-compatible PC market and finally transforming into America Online in 1989. Again, Commodore 64 before my time. The first console I had was a PlayStation 1, the original one, not the small one. Played some good games on there. Doom, which to my, 10-year-old self, that was an 18-rated game. Pretty violent. An early pioneer of the internet, much of AOL's initial mainstream success was founded on the idea that the AOL service could be set and used by everyone, whereas mainstream internet rival CompuServe tended to be the tool of choice for the technical community. It was often viewed as the kind of service that could be only used by strange men with long beards and several degrees in computer technology. I had CompuServe. I remember you'd open up Netscape browser or CompuServe browser or whatever it was, and it would have a little clock in the bottom left-hand corner or bottom right-hand corner saying how long you'd been on the internet, because it's like, remember, this is costing you. In contrast, AOL, it was easy. You just picked up one of those free trial CDs and you were pretty much ready to install the service and use the simple and accessible AOL tools, even if you still hadn't fully figured out which way you were meant to point the mouse. I didn't actually know how AOL worked. Would you have a modem built? I guess you'd have a modem, so you'd need something else. So maybe the modem was built into the computer and then you'd plug the phone into the back? Does anyone know how that worked? Like, I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. I'd like to know. The skyrocketing success of AOL even caught the company by surprise at times. By 1996, so many users were struggling to access the flooded service that CEO Steve Case was compelled to make an appearance on a television commercial explaining that his company was working day and night to fix the issues. That is a massive first world problem. My company's so successful that we have to put out an advert saying that, yeah, we're really successful and we're trying to make space for everyone. This is gonna go so wrong. Teething problems aside, AOL became the first dominant online force around the world, providing a dial-up service with web portal, email, instant messaging, and eventually its own web browser after the company purchased Netscape. I didn't even know they purchased Netscape. By 19, all of these companies, all these legacy companies that we just don't hear of anymore. Netscape and CompuServe, I feel, are less talked about than AOL. By 1997, half of all homes in America used AOL to access the internet, along with tens of millions of global users. That's intense. That is absolutely dominant. It's quite an achievement for a company who started out selling stuff to a few rich kids with Atari consoles. Were Atari super expensive? I don't even know. I remember being very pleased that I got a PS1. So when in 2001, AOL and cable network giant Time Warner announced a merger, the stage looked set for the biggest and most important union in the media and technology industry. Unfortunately, while it's still regarded as one of the biggest corporate mergers in history, it's now also studied in business schools and is as an example of one of the worst corporate mergers in history. And I went to business school, and I think this might have been one of the case studies that we had, but I'm not entirely sure. But the merger, it still looked really good on paper. Media conglomerate Time Warner had been keen to establish an online presence for some time. They had tried to get a foothold into cyberspace, but had never been able to get off the rocket pad. Meanwhile, AOL had been keen to provide valuable content within its highly effective but arguably empty user interface. This seemed pretty awesome. The proposed deal looked like it had been struck in corporate marketing heaven. AOL would finally bring the old media dinosaur Time Warner into the digital age, delivering their content to tens of millions of loyal dial-up subscribers around the world. It does sound pretty perfect. Like, here's Time Warner, they've got tons of stuff they want to show people, but they can't get it out there. AOL is like, hey guys, we can get all this stuff out there. Let's join forces and make something awesome. It's gonna be pretty great. Except it's not. Spoiler alert. In return, AOL could get the keys to the premium Okay, here we go. Yeah, obviously. Sorry, I should have realized Danny's going to say this. In return, AOL would get the keys to premium content pulled from Time Warner's cable and magazine divisions, putting an end to the days of the AOL homepage experience containing nothing more than a couple of pages of light news. So, great content getting beamed into the homes of millions of existing customers sounded like a perfect union. It does. Like, if I was working M&A on that deal, I'd be like, yeah, this seems pretty solid. The deal was expected to result in a 30% increase in profits and revenues of over $40 billion in the first year. Corporate marketing heaven. On the day of the merger being completed, shares in the shiny new AOL Time Warner, which again, I think I've heard of that, as a firm, they closed at $47.23. Just 6 months later, shares had plummeted to $9.64. What went wrong, guys? Well, I'm going to tell you what went wrong. Well, Danny's going to tell us what went wrong. To be fair, things got off to a shaky start before the deal was even finalized. AOL were accused of artificially inflating the value of their own company shares by hiding an unwelcomed fall in advertising revenue. Sneaky. It was also revealed that no less than 14 AOL Time Warner executives had sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of shares very shortly after the merger was first announced. That does not spell like, yeah, we're really confident in this merger, but I'm selling large chunks of my shares in the company. This kind of sounds like insider trading, but I'm pretty sure it's not, because notice here, shortly after the merger was first announced, it's like, all right guys, we're making this public knowledge, this merger is happening, sell, sell, sell. They're just making it legal. Insider trading was if they sold their shares before, then that would be definitely illegal. Following a flurry of lawsuits from aggrieved... Oh, okay, so they'd still have lawsuits, but they'd be from aggrieved shareholders, not from the SEC? Is that the right name of the government organization that sues people for insider or prosecutes people for insider trading? I'm not sure. I've just started watching Billions, so my knowledge about this stuff is gonna go up. So basically the shareholders are suing them because they're like, guys, not cool. You tanked the price of our shares. AOL had to shell out 2.4, whoa. Okay, so the shareholders won. AOL had to shell out $2.4 billion to settle. The ultimate blame for the downfall of AOL is often attributed to the bursting of the dot-com bubble. Oh yeah, this is 2001? Yeah, 2001. Yeah, not a great time. Just a couple of months after the merger was complete, this happened. It's certainly true to say that the timing was unfortunate. Shares in internet-based companies peaked and then dramatically fell as the economy went into recession and the big advertising dollars dried up. The bottom fell out of the market and investment from the big guns disappeared. I'm sure you are familiar with the dot-com bubble. If you'd like a video about the dot-com bubble, does everyone know everything about this? I feel like if I did a video on the dot-com bubble, people would be like, yeah, Simon, it's the dot-com bubble. 2001 was not that long ago. It's not that interesting. But I could do one. Let me know. Comment below. But the dot-com bubble is not nearly the whole story. When we scratch deeper into the details, we begin to see that this was far more than just a tale of simple bad luck. The bursting of the dot-com bubble took many of the top-name companies of the era, such as Pets.com, Boo.com, and Webvan. I came across Webvan the other day on Wikipedia. I think I was reading about it for another article we did or something. This company, Webvan, would deliver your groceries, so you'd order them on Webvan.com. And then they deliver your groceries within 30 minutes. Even today, they take 90 minutes. This was cool, I guess a bit before its time. But alongside the heavy casualties were spirited survivors. Although shares in eBay and Amazon rapidly declined at the time, they recovered fairly quickly and are still going strong today. Amazon shares is a crazy one. At the low point, 2001 recession or dot-com boom, dot-com bubble, sorry, Amazon shares were worth $6. Today they're worth about $2,000. So if you invested $1,000 in Amazon at the bottom of the market, at the dot-com bubble bursting, today you'd have like $300-something thousand. The newly formed AOL Time Warner may have been facing challenging times ahead, but it didn't need to be game over just yet. The problem was that they recklessly squandered every opportunity to get the mighty juggernaut moving back in the right direction. AOL had always been a leading player in dial-up internet access. This was back in the day when your grandma was forever shouting at you to get off the internet because she couldn't get through to Ethel on the telephone, but AOL, they were kings of the field. So true. Like, I remember my parents being like, get off the internet, I need to make a phone call. And we didn't have a second line. A friend of mine had a second line, and it was like,
wow, it's so luxurious.
But also my parents would hassle, like, downloading songs off Napster. Not that I ever pirated stuff. And it would take like 20 minutes to download one 64 kilobit per second song. You'd be like, I can't get off the internet right now, the download will stop. But the landscape was changing, and broadband internet was looming on the horizon. Millions of customers were preparing to wave goodbye to the good old days of dial-up. Good old days of dial-up, not really, and ready to embrace the always-on culture of fast broadband internet. I remember the glorious arrival of broadband internet in my home. And now we have fiber connections, which are, I don't know, wasn't broadband like 1 megabit per second? Now I have like 700. However, AOL spectacularly failed to drive customers to upgrade to its own broadband service. Whereas the company had been at the forefront of the dial-up revolution, it completely dropped the ball when it came to the broadband revolution. Its competitors were forging ahead and helping to define the new world of streaming broadband packed with exclusive content, while AOL appeared to be fumbling around in the dark. That's another thing I remember about getting broadband. The first time I streamed, and it was really hard to find like video content on the internet. This was like pre-YouTube for sure, and it was like, where do you watch videos online? And I remember I found like mountain biking. There was just videos of people mountain biking. I'm like, whoa, one day we'll be able to watch TV on our computers. Amazing! Bizarrely, the whole point of the AOL Time Warner merger seemed to have gotten flipped upside down and then forgotten. The promised content and programming from Time Warner, it just never really materialized. In fact, it reached a point where Time Warner content could be found pretty much everywhere except AOL. And it was joked at the time that the best way of getting access to Time Warner content was to resign from the AOL boardroom. Apparently so. And it's here that we arrive at the fundamental reason of what really went wrong with AOL. Forget parking all of the blame on the gravestone of the dot-com bubble. The most important reason was simply a behind-the-scenes culture clash between Time Warner and AOL. Culture clash. This is, maybe I remember this. Time Warner was very much driven by content gurus, whereas AOL was driven by marketers. Back in their dial-up heyday, AOL never worried too much about providing content. Their audience were pretty much just forced to stay on AOL during a typical online session, and so there was very little risk of customers wandering off and finding a competitor. All AOL had to do was market the service and get those millions of trial CDs into the big wide world to effectively own their customers. I feel like today, it'd just be like you'll be browsing, you browse around on the internet and they're advertising internet to you. It's like, I'm already on the internet. Yeah, but are you satisfied? Is your internet fast enough? Over at Time Warner, do you want a second internet connection? Over at Time Warner, the content editors ruled the roost and wielded more power than marketers or publishers. Unfortunately, the merger of the two companies didn't pay enough attention or care to the completely different cultures. Only a few people at the very top of the two companies were involved in thrashing out the details of the deal. Most division executives from either company were just not invited to participate. Yes, when you don't get buy-in from the people lower down, it's not going to be a good time afterwards. And it turns out that most of the key players at Time Warner were not very happy at the thought of playing ball with these marketing boffins from from AOL, so they didn't. Too much Storm Area 51 videos. By the time this video goes out, I'm sure that reference is super out of date. Some of them claims that the merger with AOL was a complete waste of time and resources. Others feared that AOL would try and take over the whole company. Either way, Time Warner effectively froze out their new colleagues at AOL. Many of the big Time Warner brands of the era, such as CNN and HBO, were all too happy to slap their fresh content anywhere on the web, not just with the very people they were supposed to have partnered with. Yeah, because they didn't like them. It was hardly a recipe for success. AOL kept on struggling with no support from their new partners, and the share price of AOL plummeted, with the new merged company writing off a loss of $99 billion. It was only around a year later that AOL was dropped altogether from the Time Warner name, so essentially sort of just became an acquisition, really. Of course, AOL lived on in a way. It was eventually spun off from Time Warner in 2009 and continues to be an active brand. I told you so, although nowhere near the same scale as it was when AOL was a part of the digital furniture in tens of millions of households around the world. Perhaps the saddest thing of all is that the most disastrous merger of all time could have easily gone so right. Yeah, like at the beginning we said, it's a match made in marketing heaven. It almost seems as if it took a momentous amount of effort to cock it up quite so badly. I love that phrase. Some experts suggest that all it really needed was one of Time Warner's content gurus installed at the top of the AOL division to ensure a smooth collaboration with all other parties and divisions. That would have been a good idea, guys. But hindsight's 2020, we can't blame them. Or maybe it just needed those few executives who thrashed out the deal to communicate their vision more clearly to the people below them. Yes, that also would have been a good idea, instead of just signing the papers and hoping that the wildly different cultures and divisions would just sort of work it all out. When you're talking about billion-dollar companies, I don't feel like that's really got much of a shot of working, evidenced. Either way, if there's one good thing to have come from this whole sorry mess, it's that the business students of tomorrow will still be learning the valuable lesson on how not to carry out a merger in the future. Indeed. Okay, this was AOL. We got some bonus facts. Thank you, Danny, for putting those together. We have 3 of these. Okay, number 1. The AOL free trial CD became one of the most aggressive marketing campaigns in history, and it cost well over $300 million to create and distribute the CDs. However, it certainly paid off. The number of AOL subscribers rose from 200,000 to 34 million. Those CDs were everywhere. Like, my gran would get these CDs, and she would string them up on wire in her garden to scare the birds away from her fruit trees, I think. I'm not sure what those CDs were for, but she had lots of them strung up in the garden. Is dial-up number 2? Is dial-up really dead? Believe it or not, more than 2 million American households still pay for dial-up services as part of their AOL package, although it's classed as backup dial-up. So it's unknown how many people are actually using it for emergencies, or how many people have just unwittingly left the recurring charge floating around on their monthly bills. I am going to say that it's almost certainly just one of those things that they get billed for and they're like, yeah, I don't really know what that is, but it's not expensive, so whatever. My bank statements are a mess of what did I get charged $5 for? What is that? I didn't even know. Also, who uses dial-up for an emergency? When my internet goes out, it's well, that's what I have a mobile phone for. Number 3, bonus fact 3. We've come a long way. If a dial-up internet connection was being used today, it would take 2.5 minutes to load the average web page, and staggeringly 5 minutes to load up something as visually complex as Pinterest. It would even take well over 10 seconds to launch something as simple and basic as a Google search page. I bet there's a website out there that purposefully slows down your internet so you can browse the internet on a dial-up connection. If there's not, there should be, because I would love to see how long it takes to load. Even this is all done on like Google Drive. That must take forever. You're loading like a word processor in a browser. I have no idea how technology works, but I'm sure it takes forever. This has been a Business Blaze episode. Thank you, Danny, for putting this together. This is all about AOL, where it went wrong. If you've got suggestions for Business Blaze in the future, you know what to do. Drop them below this in the comments section, vote up the ones you like, and we'll get to making them. We'll get something drawn up and we'll go through it together. It'll be a good time. And like, subscribe, all of that stuff. See you next time.